Max Ma is an Edmonton-based organizer with Direct Action Everywhere Alberta, and he's also involved with Voice for Animals. Max has agreed to speak with us today from wherever he is in Alberta, somewhere on the streets doing direct action right now. Thanks for taking the time to do this, Max.
Hi, Janine. Thank you for having me on. I am in Edmonton, Alberta right now on White Ave, and I'm in front of the group called Anonymous for the Voiceless. They do vegan street outreach. They show slaughterhouse videos and talk to people about veganism.
That's the Cube of Truth, is it?
Yeah, that's right. The Cube of Truth. It was founded in Australia and it spread to several chapters around the world. And it's a great way to get involved in activism for folks who have never done activism before. It's a good community and you have good conversations with the public. You engage the public, get them to make the connections between animals that they love and animals on their plate and ask them to go vegan. And then you show them the horrors and the cruelties of what happens to animals inside of slaughterhouses and on CAFOs, that's concentrated animal feedlot operations. So they provide the videos that are shot all around the world. There's local videos and it's standard industry footage that we see, and consistently we see so much harm done to animals, and it's all the same all around the world in every country, and no country promotes that there's a humane way to slaughter animals. There's no humane way to keep them on concentration camps in animal farms, and the video footage shows all the evidence of that.
Right, and it kind of looks like you're just getting set up. I like the Cube of Truth. I participated in that, and I like I wasn't involved in engaging with the population. So for people who want to be an activist, you can be one of the people holding the computers and the screens, right? And then the other people do the outreach.
Yes, that's right. Or you take turns, vice versa.
Yeah, and so what kind of responses do you get from people?
It's quite a mixed response. It's several people are really engaged. Several people haven't seen the footage before and they're shocked, and other people are indifferent. So there's a mixture of everybody, and the idea is you can't unsee what you've seen. So we catch a lot of eyeballs, and at least it plants a seed. And people need to know what's going on. It's an uncomfortable truth, but once you see the footage, you have to make the connection, and we'll help people make the connection, our outreachers. And if you want to turn away, it plants a seed. You know what's going on. You can't hide the uncomfortable truth.
Right, and it seems reasonable that if you know, if you're gonna participate in putting that stuff in your body, then you should probably know where it comes from. I wish I was a vegetarian for many years, and I wish I had known more about what goes on dairy farms, for example. I would have become vegan much sooner, but all of this is sort of happens behind closed doors. And then now there's all these ag gag bills where I think you have one in Alberta now, right? And they don't want they don't want anybody to collect this footage. They don't want anybody to know what's going on. That seems really weird.
Yeah, for years the public has been deceived and very much in the dark about what goes on behind in slaughterhouses. But thanks to the information age, it's all out in the open right now. And in Alberta, yes, our legislators are very much behind. And recently, Alberta has passed an ag gag law called Bill 27. And that was a result of some civil disobedience that our activists in Alberta have participated in. So last year, a group of Alberta activists, including myself, we locked down in a turkey farm in southern Alberta, and we've also taken action at a sled dog operation. And in response, our provincial government, they enacted some laws that prevent activists and the general public from going on properties and taking footage of what happens to animals in these exploitation industries and these animal husbandry industries. So it criminalizes activists and the public, and it's not to prevent animal cruelty, it's not to prevent any harm to animals, it's to prevent the public from seeing and knowing what happens to animals in the food system. And we see instances like this happening all across the country where activists have stepped up and have done civil disobedience and shown what's happened to animals in these farms. And consistently, governments are trying to crack down. So we have Bill 156 in Ontario, and BC is also looking at enacting egg laws, and Quebec as well. So it's a pattern of silencing whistleblowers, and it's very unfortunate. It's unconstitutional, and for years, activists have been trying to engage politicians, and these bureaucrats, they cannot address the issue. So we've signed petitions, we've met with our MLAs and MPs, and the system is just broken. We can't get anywhere. So activists around the country and really around the world, all across Canada and so many other countries too, Germany, France, all across the US, all across Europe, and even in Korea, Australia, activists are taking it upon themselves to go and film what's happening inside, rescue animals when they can, and bring attention to our governments and try to pass laws to protect animals, because pretty much in all the countries, all the laws, they just treat animals as property and not as the individuals that you and I know that they are.
Right, and then they penalize the people who are trying to expose the cruelty rather than the people who are enacting the cruelty on the animals. Nothing ever seems to happen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that in Alberta too, with very draconian laws that they've passed. And it's more than just Bill 27 as well. Recently, they've been also enacted something called the Critical Infrastructure Act, Bill 1. And in response, this MP in Southern Alberta, his name is John Barlow. That is where we conducted the turkey farm investigation. I'd like to warn the Canadian public that there is a danger of a federal egg gag law being passed. It's called Bill C-205, and that was in response to what we did at the Alberta turkey farm there called Jumbo Valley, and it's a private member's bill, and typically private member's bills has a very low chance of passing, but from what I last saw, it has gone past first reading in the House of Commons. So there's a danger that federal egg laws could be enacted. And I'd like to ask Canadians to write to their MP, call their MP, and prevent Bill C-205 from coming into law. That would be the federal version of what's happening like in Ontario, Bill 156, where we've seen recently heavy fines, jail time, very much intimidation by our governments.
And it seems like if our government is investing in animal agriculture, which they do, right? They subsidize the animal agriculture industry with billions of dollars, as I understand it, even more than we give to oil and gas. Like, this is our tax money going into these horror camps where animals are just treated. There's no regulation. We don't even know what's going on there. So it seems like a conflict of interest. Like, if, you know, our elected officials now are trying to pass laws to protect these industries that they're investing in, you know, it seems like a very shady thing all around. So maybe do you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, okay, so here's one thing is that, I mean, I've heard it said that, okay, well, this is private property, and if people are going to come on private property, then, you know, they risk arrest. Okay, well, that's one thing. But I think these ag gag bills also extend to like the workers. So right now there's COVID is happening inside the slaughterhouses. We know that the workers are not in safe working conditions. And even if those people try to expose what's going on, then they could be penalized as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And that's what these egg laws do. It makes it pretty much impossible for somebody to come forward with footage without being persecuted or arrested for claiming ownership of those videos.
Right. Somebody's excited. What's happening over there? Somebody's excited about something.
Somebody's reacting to the footage of our video from the anonymous queue here.
It was really interesting. I only did it the one time, and I stood with the computer. And what I like about it is, you know, you're not forcing it on anybody, right? Like, people can walk up to it, and then you get all these different reactions. Yeah, and people had some great conversations. And a lot of people walked away thinking, you know, I need to do something different. It's a very powerful outreach for sure. Yeah.
Yes, it is. That's how I pretty much got started. Before Anonymous came around, there were local activists who were canvassing on around the streets in Edmonton here, and I ran into a local activist on the streets from the Voice for Animals group. That's our local group in Edmonton. We work on local issues, and she was handing out materials, and that's finally I decided that I need to make the connection. I cannot repress cognitively or morally or ethically what what we all know to be is an inconvenient and uncomfortable truth. And I just had to face it head on. And so I took the resources and the materials and I researched documentaries, websites, books, and it was unfathomable what animals go through in every industry, in the agricultural industry, in entertainment, hunting, sports, vivisection, fur, you name it. It's an atrocity that we need to stop, and we need to stop turning a blind eye to this. The whole world, all of us, every one of us, we are facing an imminent threat in this world, and that threat comes from each and every one of us. And if we want a world of peace, we have to be peaceful people and show kindness and mercy to those that are vulnerable and who are at our mercy. And the animals, they cannot protect themselves from human tyranny. So they need people, they need activists to intervene and stop this genocide atrocity against them. And
Yeah.
after seeing countless footage of what happens to animals, I decided I've got to do something about it, because for the vast majority of my life, I didn't.
Same, you know, and peace begins on our plates, doesn't it? And the good news is that we do have that power, right? We do have the power to change, and it's easy. It's so easy, and it's healthier for us, and it's healthier for the planet. And you know, and then you can find a new community of friends who care about the same things that you do. And so, how long have you been vegan now, Max?
I've been vegan for 5 years now, Janine.
Wow. And so have you been doing activism all along, all those 5 years?
For most of the time, yes. When I first got vegan, I didn't get active in the community yet. Activism was just breaking out with all these different groups going around the world, really. There's Anonymous for the Voiceless now, there's Save Movement, DxE, and so many different groups to get involved in different ways to participate in activism. You can bear witness to animals, individuals, stop slaughter trucks. And I don't know if people have seen the news recently in Ontario, there was a tragedy about an activist named Regan Russell. She was stopping a slaughter truck to bear witness and pay her last tributes and memories to the animals that were about to go to slaughter. And the slaughter truck ran her over and killed her. And it's very unfortunate and very sad, but I know she would want us to carry on, and we will, and we're not going to be phased. We're not going to be scared. The industry is fighting back because they know that activism is on the rise. They know that people are becoming aware, and they want to shut us down. The governments want to shut us down. And you were talking about the egg laws there, Janine, and the subsidies. A lot of the public doesn't know that the animal agriculture business is subsidized heavily by the government, and there is that collusion, or there is that lobbying from the industry. There's a heavy lobby, and that was witnessed in Alberta's egg laws here, where the turkey board and pretty much all of animal agriculture in Alberta here, it's a heavily based agricultural province here. They really lobbied our provincial government to enact these laws in order to silence whistleblowers and to shut us down and prevent the public from knowing what's going on.
Yeah, well, we're not going to stop. What do you want to talk about the turkey farm a little bit, what you saw there? what you think people should know about?
Okay, the turkey farm. If anybody has seen the documentaries like Dominion or Earthlings, these are, it's pretty much concentrated animal feedlot operations, so a concentration camp for animals, and they all live thousands to tiny industrial sheds. They're cramped all in together. They live in miserable, horrible, awful conditions that are disease-ridden. They live in their own waste and in urine and feces, and we found like rotting corpses, decomposing corpses in the barn, and many birds with injuries, bleeding birds, and also with tumors, and birds that were cannibalizing each other. And that's what happens in conditions when beings are enclosed together, caged. Photobomb. Sorry about that.
Well, and so you guys were there to bear witness and to try to expose this to the public. And did you stay there and then get arrested on the spot?
Yes, we did. Well, we didn't get arrested on the spot, but after the police came, there was an investigation done, and then it became highly politicized. And Jason Kenney, our premier, he went in the media and announced that there would be egg laws forthcoming. And then we were arrested sometime later. Some of the activists involved were arrested, and he announced that there would be several resources dedicated towards prosecuting activists who trespass on farms, on agricultural properties. So some of the announcements he made were that they would dedicate a dedicated Crown prosecutor, and that they would use injunctions and bonds and heavy fines to crack down on activists. So this is, I feel, an atrocious waste of resources in the province here, when the court systems are backed up with violent offenders. And here we are, activists around the world who do these farm investigations and protests. We adhere to nonviolence. We are nonviolent, peaceful activists. And as a Direct Action Everywhere activist, we model our activism after MLK, Martin Luther King. So we adhere to our core values of nonviolence. And that's what we want in our world. In a world of violence towards other sentient beings, other animals, we believe nonviolent protest is the sweet spot here to get our message across. Because with nonviolence activism, we have what we call moral authority and the moral high ground.
Absolutely. And so I know DxE sometimes will do a rescue in these types of actions. They'll try to take one or two animals with them. Were you guys able to do that, or was that part of the action?
Yes, fortunately that day we were able to rescue 5 turkeys and bring them to sanctuary. And I've also been part of Meet the Victims earlier last year in BC, and that was at Excelsior Hog Farm in Abbotsford, BC. And there we found awful conditions too. Pigs in gestation crates. So gestation crates they're outlawed in a few countries. They're not yet outlawed in Canada, and they are to hold mother pigs in these crates where they cannot turn around. They're birthing crates. And you can, if anybody Googles or hashtags MTV or Meet the Victims, it's a worldwide movement as well, going around different countries. And it is to showcase what's happening again in all these farms across the world. And you'll see, we discovered pigs with prolapses on that farm. Prolapses are when an individual's organs fall out of their uterus or their vagina due to birthing complications. And these animals in the farming industry, in the agricultural industry, they're force impregnated over and over again to give birth. So it's what the industry calls rape. And when a female mammal is raped, there's going to be birthing complications, biological defects, and they're going to suffer immensely, physically and emotionally. And that's what we see in these farms: constant suffering.
Yeah, like their whole life. They live their whole life there, and then they're loaded onto a truck and they're shipped for days to the slaughter, and they don't get any water along the way. I mean, it's just the whole thing is nasty. While we're on the subject of nasty things, what about the sled dogs? What should we know about them?
Sled dogs. So last year, several activists across the country have taken action for sled dogs in Alberta, included in Canmore. So in the sled dog industry, we wanted to expose, it was led by an activist named Fern Levitt, who filmed a documentary called Sled Dogs. And we wanted to showcase what most of the lives of sled dogs are like. So in Canadian tourism, on the brochures and pamphlets, they have gorgeous romantic pictures of dogs pulling tourists in the Canadian winters, but in reality, they spend the vast majority of their lives in a kennel, chained up to 3 to 6 foot tethers. And this will be during the heat of summer to the depths of minus 30, 40 in the winter. And they have, for shelter, just either plastic barrels or really dilapidated wooden dog houses. And they're not sheltered properly from the elements. They cannot break free from their chains. And animal behaviorists and psychologists, they have deemed that tethering it's as bad as keeping an animal in a cage. And that's why we see jurisdictions, they have banned tethering outright. Or if you tether a dog, it's for a limited time only, maybe up to half an hour, 1 hour. And we're looking to change these laws here because every province, they have their own Animal Protection Act. And there's loopholes and flaws in the Animal Protection Act. And in the Alberta one, it states that no individual should cause harm to or distress to an animal. And the way around, there's a loophole in this law, and that's how these industries are able to utilize animals for the sled dog industry or for hunting or for anything else, is because in the law it exempts that. It directly says that no individual should cause an animal harm, but exempted are these industries.
Wow. Well, and I believe that people I really believe in this educational outreach, because I think, like you, and once people know, you can ignore it for a little while, and then eventually I think people want to do the right thing. Like if people see a dog in a car on a hot day, they get freaked out about it and they phone the police and they want to do something about it. But the only reason these other things are going on is because people don't know about it. Right. So I really think this is activism is a wonderful thing, and you're a superstar for doing it, you guys. And so I know that there's something that is going on to try to create an animal bill of rights called Rose's Law. Do you know about that?
Yes, that's right. I helped organize the one in Edmonton as well. So Rose's Law, it's a worldwide action, and it is to pressure our governments to pass laws and enshrine it into Constitution and call something called an Animal Bill of Rights, Rose's Law. The name came from a hen named Rose, and inspired by actions from DxE, Direct Action Everywhere, where hens were rescued in a Sonoma County farm. And some of those hens, they were promised to be saved, but they were sent to slaughter instead. But the FBI and the police, they did the right thing, and they at least let one hen survive, and that hen's name was Rose. So that's where this came from, this Bill of Rights. And this Bill of Rights, it has several asks of our government. I will lay them out briefly here. So what we are asking in Rose's Law of our governments is for animals, for them to have the right to be free and not owned. Like ownership is slavery. Ownership of a sentient being is slavery. Or to have a guardian acting in their best interest. And another ask of Rose's Law is for animals to have the right to not be exploited or to be killed by humans. They need protection under the law, not treated as commodities to be exploited until exhaustion or collapse. And another ask of Rose's Law is for their rights to be represented in the court of law and protected by the court of law. And for that, we need the Constitution, their constitutional rights to be rewritten and to be recognized as individuals, to be protected under the law, not as property, because right now animals, they are treated as property no different than a bike or a cell phone. And another ask of Rose's Law is for the right to for them to have a right to be a protected home or habitat. And the last ask of Rose's Law so far is for animals to have the right to be rescued from situations of distress and exploitation, so that when we know an animal is in distress, like as you mentioned, Janine, suffering in a hot car, that anybody seeing them doing so can break that window, rescue that dog, and not suffer any repercussions from the law of being arrested or fined for saving that animal, whether that be a dog in a hot car or an animal about to be slaughtered in a factory farm.
So Rose's Law is a global initiative then, hey, that people in all countries are trying to get their governments to enact?
There are several countries involved right now, and you can find out more from roseslaw.org or from Direct Action Everywhere. And I've seen several countries around. It's great to see so many activists rising up around the world and exposing this. We've seen actions where, right here in Canada, there were several actions taken in Ontario earlier in the year at Reichart Duck Farm in Ontario. That was done for Rose's Law, where 50-some ducks were rescued, and they highlighted similar conditions to what we saw in the turkey farm in Alberta, where their ducks, they were living in brutal conditions and multiple injuries, birds dying, rotting in the farm. And as a result, that it was an action that triggered egg laws in Ontario as well. And we've seen this in Quebec, done recently at Le Progrès. It's close to Montreal, so that was a pig breeding farm. And there were horrific conditions found in there. That can be found online too. And we saw dilapidated farms there. There were electrical hazards. The farm was filthy cobwebs and everything, and there was fire hazards. That farm could have burned down very easily. And we saw pigs living in their own waste, like just feces-ridden, filth-ridden conditions. And these farms, they are breeding grounds for superbugs. And maybe that's what we can touch upon next, Janine.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the viruses, the zoonotic diseases. We know that I think it's 75% of infectious diseases come from our interaction, exploitation with animals. Now, I have to say, I'm not seeing a lot of people wearing masks in Edmonton there. You guys, do you want to talk about the connection between COVID and animal agriculture? But I'm also interested in knowing how you guys are doing with COVID. It looks like you're doing okay, hey?
Oh, absolutely. So animal agriculture is such a source of diseases, whether it be COVID-19, SARS, MERS, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, bacterial infections. It all comes from the waste, the feces the manure pits, the cesspools that contaminate our waterways, and also the flesh of animals that we slaughter here. And in these farms, that's the conditions that we're seeing is animals are infected with bacterial infections, staphylococcus infections. And I'd like to mention about the next upcoming superbug that we need to research. It's we could be facing pandemics and diseases far worse than COVID-19 here. And that is something called antibiotic resistance. And antibiotic resistant infections are very dangerous. What's happening is that much of the antibiotics produced in the world are going to feed these animals inside, these livestock animals inside these farms. And the reason they do that is twofold. It's because it increases the weight of animals. It makes their growth rate faster to fatten them up for slaughter. And it also keeps them alive just long enough to get them to slaughter, because in order to survive those horrific conditions of crowdedness on the farms, of the feces-ridden bacterial filth conditions, they need those antibiotics to keep them alive long enough to survive that. And so what's happening is bacteria is growing resistant to these drugs, and the drugs, these antibiotics, will no longer be effective any longer. So antibiotic use is meant for human use to prevent infection and diseases, but we're feeding it to these animals instead. And with the heavy usage of antibiotics, human diseases are going to become untreatable, because as bacteria grows and adapts, we need more and more of these antibiotics here. So diseases like typical diseases that were routine, we go to the hospital for, they're going to become very difficult procedures and life-threatening procedures instead of being able to be treated by the antibiotics that were meant for us humans to protect from.
Right, and I understand. I think there's a lot of doctors are speaking out about the usage of antibiotics in the animal farming industry, but I'm not sure if they're being heard, and I'm not sure why not, especially in a country like Canada where we have a national healthcare system. I guess maybe I don't know, we need more vegans, right, who are aware of all these issues and have seen these conditions and are not afraid to see these conditions and understand and make the connection. So it's very important work what you're doing there. I'm wondering about the turkeys that you guys rescued and the sanctuaries. So let's talk a little bit about sanctuaries, because again, I have never been to one. I've been to them virtually, but you visited sanctuaries. They look like wonderful places.
They are amazing places. I've been to several sanctuaries around the province here, and I like to visit sanctuaries anywhere I travel to. And it's great. It's a very peace-loving place, and it's very affectionate place, caring place. You can see it in the animals. That's where they're meant to be. We would like to turn all our slaughterhouses into sanctuaries, and there's a great connection between the animals and nature and humans, and it's so liberating for all of us to see animals free and living in the environment that they're supposed to be. And it's where our soul should be. That's what we're born into this world for, is to protect the weak. We're not supposed to be bringing harm to other beings in this world. And I'd like to ask everybody to rediscover our humanity and reconnect with the beings that we share this planet with. They are living beings, and they need to be protected from tyranny. And when you make that connection, it is so liberating, and you free yourself, you free others. And please go visit a sanctuary, donate your time. Sanctuary operators, they have it very a difficult time running their sanctuaries because of financial situations too. So if you can donate a little bit of money to help them out too, because it costs a lot to maintain the sanctuary, to feed the animals, and they're doing a great service for the world here.
They are, and they're not breeding animals. They're just, these are rescued, all the rescued animals go to sanctuary, and then they just get to live to the end of their natural lives, right? But the idea is that we don't need to be breeding millions and millions and millions of these into existence as we are.
Yeah, that's right. And in doing so, force breeding the livestock that we use for food, it's destroying our environment and planet and wild animals too. And I would like people to know that as well. So it's not only the cows that you eat, but by force breeding them, we're destroying rainforests, we're destroying arable land around the world, and deforestation, taking away land usage is destroying habitats for other animals as well, wildlife animals. We're losing wildlife at an unprecedented rate, like something like 1,000 times the natural rate of species loss that we otherwise would, because we are destroying their habitat of elephants, giraffes, lions, orangutans. All these wildlife are disappearing because we are destroying their home in order to grow crops, which we feed to livestock animals. And we can solve world hunger by going vegan. If we had a vegan world, we wouldn't be suffering the way we are now, because the world has enough resources to feed all of our need, but not to feed everybody's greed. And that's what these corporations are doing. The fossil fuel industry, the animal agricultural industry, they're growing all these crops, the soy crops, and feeding them to animals instead of feeding them to humans. And we slaughter 56 something billion animals every year in the livestock industry, and trillions of fish, and all these crops could be going to much better usage. It's really a rape of the resources of the planet in order to feed our livestock. And that's part of the vegan message as well that I would like to share with people. If you care about this planet, if you care about our habitat, our environment, and our future, we really need to stop destroying it. And please go vegan for a sustainable future. It's not sustainable if we keep eating the flesh of these other humans. Killing them kills us.
Absolutely, and it's not necessary. We can live beautiful, vibrant, healthy lives as vegans. It's a much nicer way to live. I heard something today. I was listening to a YouTube interview with Anita from Toronto Pig Safe, and she was mentioning that there's a connection now they've found directly between Cargill and the Brazilian rainforest, which is largely being decimated for exactly what you're talking about, growing these GMO crops to feed to cattle, primarily for fast food burgers. I wonder if you know about that, because the first time I saw you, you were at a DxE Action outside Cargill, I think.
Yes, Cargill is one of those multinational corporations, Janine, who rape and pillage the resources of the planet. And much like many heartless corporations, they want to exploit our planet until exhaustion or collapse. They're complicit in this ring of fire. And I'd like to talk about some of the workers here too, Janine, in Cargill. As I was mentioning, I recently read an article in Alberta where temporary foreign workers, there's a temporary foreign worker program, and there's the provincial government here is seeking to suspend that, but they are exempting Cargill and slaughterhouses. And the workers in Cargill, they are largely temporary foreign workers. They are hired here largely on false pretenses. So Canada is hiring these workers to do the dirty work because nobody else wants to. So I would like to ask folks, if you cannot slaughter an animal yourself, the next logical step is, would you pay somebody else to do it for you? And unfortunately, these are people largely from poor countries, from Philippines. Many Filipino in the community are hired here through agencies, lured here through false employment promises, working in slaughterhouses, exposed daily to all this violence and this blood and guts inside slaughterhouses, having to hoist animals upside down on conveyor belts, slicing their throats, hundreds or thousands of animals a day. That is their job, and they have to clean up all the blood and guts. They have to saw the carcasses in half, remove their organs, dispose of them, and it's just not a pleasant job at all. And if there's a high turnover rate, a lot of people, I've met people in slaughterhouses. A lot of people have quit the same day or within a few days. And to our bureaucrats, I would like to say, if you think that this is necessary and essential as you have deemed during the COVID-19 crisis, I would like to invite our political bureaucrats to do that job themselves for one day and see if you can last as a slaughterhouse worker.
Yeah, there's no need for it. It's not good for the animals, it's not good for the humans, it's not good for the earth. There's no need for it. That message is clear, Max, and I really thank you for taking the time today to explain some of the activism that you've been involved with. And it sounds like you're not going to stop anytime soon, which is awesome. Do you have any recommendations for people? Like, a lot of people are still at home. Do you have any favorite documentaries that you think people ought to watch, or how would you suggest people enter this world of activism?
I hope people have taken the time out to view Dominion, the Dominion movement, or Earthlings. And if it touches your heart, if it touches your soul, and if you feel what we are doing to animals is wrong, there's plenty of ways to get involved in your community. You can set up a chapter through one of the groups that I mentioned, either DxE, Save, or Anonymous for the Voiceless. If there isn't already in your location, you can contact these groups and set up a chapter, or join one that's already set up. The activist community is awesome. There's like-minded people who are very peaceful, loving, and caring, who just want to see liberation and peace for animals and peace for humans. And we live in such a world of turmoil. It starts with the most oppressed. If we can't free the weakest among us, then we were born into this world for no reason.
Mm.
If you're not going to do something about the suffering, we have no purpose in this world. So contact an organizer or organize a chapter yourself. There's many ways to get started, either through outreach or through vigils. You can visit a slaughterhouse, try to stop the trucks, and the governments, they're going to try to intimidate us. But you know, Janine, the more they enact these laws, what it's showing is that they feel that activists are a threat to the power of the truth, the power of videos, the power of film, and to the truth of what we're showing and sharing out there in the world. And they want to crack down on this because they want to keep this hidden in the dark as long as they have, in order to continue exploiting and slaughtering animals.
And
So
clearly you're having an impact, because otherwise they wouldn't need to enact the laws. So what you're doing is working, right? What we're doing as activists is having an impact. And so they're trying to stop it. And there's lots of support. There's legal organizations, there's animal lawyers, there's people trying to fight these bills on a constitutional level. So are you a little bit more like wary? Have these bills sort of caused you to think, oh, well, I really would like to do that action, but you know, now there's even bigger repercussions?
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle here, Janine, but the more they crack down on us, the more we win. And the more they intimidate us, the more that we will win. So with these egg gag laws, there's a animaljustice.ca, Camille Labchuk and her lawyer group, they're doing great work, and they will overturn these unconstitutional egg gag laws in Alberta, in Ontario, in Quebec, and everywhere. And by enacting those laws, it is showing the world, showing the public that the governments are trying to hide something.
Right, right. And I like what Chris Hedges, he's a vegan, and what he has to say is, he says, I don't fight fascists because I'm going to win. I fight fascists because they're fascists, right? We do the fight because we have to do it.
Chris Hedges is an amazing activist in this world. He's an amazing voice. I would encourage anybody to listen to his videos and read his books. And he doesn't get to talk about veganism very often, but he does. And he's mentioned the very issues that we have talked about, Janine. And exactly, we face a very despotic, dystopian world, and I have hope in this world. Let's be realistic. We have a very difficult fight ahead of us on the path to animal liberation. But if we don't take up that battle, then everything that is beautiful, everything that we cherish, everything that we love in this world will have been lost, because that is the imminent threat in front of us right now as we see our world crumble apart from the mistreatment of animals and of each other as a consequence. And as long as there are slaughterhouses in this world, there will be battlefields.
That seems like a good place to end it, Max. Thank you so much for taking this time today and for doing all this amazing work. And let's stay in touch, okay?
Thank you very much for having me, Janine. It was a pleasure.
All right. You guys take care and be safe.
Okay, you too.
Okay.